Okay, thank you again and welcome. I am so grateful to our sponsor for today's events, the Sam and Diane Stewart Family Foundation. The Mountain West Arts Conference is self-supporting, which means it's funded through participant fees and sponsorships. The Sam and Diane Stewart Family Foundation immediately consented to bring in our keynote virtually this year. I so appreciate the trust and support from the Sam and Diane Stewart Family Foundation as we bring you this presentation virtually. This event has been pulled together with our Arts and Museums team, and I'd like to acknowledge Jason Bowcutt, Jean Takuda Irwin, Tracy Hansford, Raquel Cornali, Alyssa Hickman Grove, and Emilie Starr for pivoting and bringing this presentation to you today. Just so you know, here's the agenda. Jean Takuda Irwin will introduce Glenis Redmond. Ms. Redmond will join and speak. Then Jason will moderate a Q&A. We're scheduled to run until 2 p.m., at which time, as Emilie mentioned, we're going to take a 15-minute break, and those interested may join us for a 45-minute reflection at 2:15. So presenting the Mountain West Arts Conference virtually is new to us. Normally we meet in person and have an opportunity to network and share ideas. So the 2:15 reflection is a chance for those interested to join a conversation where we share our thoughts and feelings about today's keynote. And again, the link will be, for the reflection will be in the chat, so please register for that. Okay, I'm so excited to do this year. For almost 30 years, Jean Takuda Irwin has been the Arts Education Program Manager for the Utah Division of Arts and Museums. In this position, she has been a tireless advocate for arts education, for artists of color, for equity and representation, and for young people across the state. Jean is continually innovating and working to create more sustainable long-term arts education projects. In a Deseret News article, Jean noted, when a child discovers he can dance or paint or make a song, that he can create beautiful things, it gives him a sense of who he is. And this self-discovery helps him to launch into other fields. I want every child of every race to have this sense, through many opportunities to get involved with their own arts, to feel important, to be proud of what their ancestral nation has produced. I am so fortunate and grateful to work with Jean Takuda Irwin, who will now introduce our keynote speaker.
Good afternoon. Glenis Redmond traveled so much reading and teaching poetry, she earned the title Road Warrior Poet. She is a poet in residence at the Peace Center for the Performing Arts in Greenville, South Carolina, and the State Theater in New Brunswick, New Jersey. She has served as a mentor poet for the National Student Poets Program to prepare students to read at the Library of Congress, the Department of Education, and for the White House. She is a North Carolina Literary Fellowship recipient and a Kennedy Center teaching artist. In February of 2020, the South Carolina Arts Commission awarded Glenis the Elizabeth O'Neill Verner Governor's Award for the Arts for the Individual Artist category. She is a recipient of many other awards, too numerous to mention here. She is the author of Backbone, What My Hands Say, Under the Sun, and Gwendolyn Knight, Discovering Powerful. I met this poetic fire starter in Washington, D.C. a few years ago during the National Poetry Out Loud competition. She served as one of the judges. I was told by colleagues, she's magical. So in partnership with Utah Presents, she went to schools in Logan, Ogden, and Salt Lake City and taught students and teachers. She mesmerized students no longer restless. Students shared their own hearts and souls through poems they wrote. She enchanted teachers. One teacher told me 3 years later, she changed me as an individual and how I teach English forever. Now confined at home since June, fighting multiple myeloma, she remains a working poet, crafting and reading poems to others. Last week on Facebook, after a bone marrow transplant she had, she read for an hour. I listened, I laughed, and I cried. She writes of love, loss, celebration, sorrow, and hope. I've learned that, quote, nothing evades a heart, end quote. And quote, if you have nothing nice to say, lace it with sugar, end quote. That her mama can do anything, and if you're gonna have your school picture taken, you better make sure your hair is fine. Each time I hear Glenis, I learn. Now, our gift to you. Glenis Redmond, a granddaughter, her mama and father's daughter, a sibling, a mother of twins, Gaga to 5-year-old grandson Julian, and of course, a beloved poet, Glenis Redmond.
Hello, everyone. It is such an honor to join you, and I want to thank Jean for that beautiful introduction. And I'm almost in tears just hearing her talk. I want to thank all of the staff, and also specifically Jason and Jean, because that is why I was able to connect with Utah. I was in Utah in 2016 and had planned to be there today and to do a poetry reading and keynote and bring my family. So as the crisis is today, we're all at home. And I just want to let you know that my heart is with your heart. And this is a circle from South Carolina to Utah and all the points in between. The way I wanted to start off today was what I do and how I do is through poetry. So I want to talk to you a little bit about my story. Jean did mention in June, I was diagnosed with multiple myeloma. As of now, I'm on my 100th day after my stem cell transplant, and that will be tomorrow. And so we'll find out if the stage has changed. And my biggest, I think, accomplishment, which has really nothing to do with me, is that I am a Gaga. I am a grandma. And my 5-year-old grandson is near and dear to me. The theme today is poetry, inspiration, empowerment, needed lifelines now more than ever. And I truly believe that. And so I want to remind you, please, if you don't have it now, get pen and paper or something to write with, because I will be giving you a writing prompt midway this keynote. So make sure you have pen, paper, or if you type on the computer, be ready. I'm going to navigate my way and my story around poems. And I want to tell you, 28 years ago, my life shifted. I was a counselor for the state of South Carolina, a clinical 2 counselor for the state of South Carolina, when I fell ill. And my boss at the time said, you really do need to just take some time and some time off. And while I was taking that time off, I was diagnosed with fibromyalgia 28 years ago. And it wasn't until I turned on the television and I was watching PBS, and Bill Moyers, who's my guru, had this program called The Language of Life, which was interesting to me because as my life was waning, I was looking at this program called The Language of Life and heard this beautiful poem that shifted me. And I just want to share it with you. And if you don't know any of the poets that I'm going to share with you the first 15 minutes, please write their names down. This poem is by Lucille Clifton, and it goes like this. Won't you celebrate with me what I have shaped into a kind of life? I had no model. Born in Babylon, both non-white and woman, what did I see to be except myself? I made it up. Here on this bridge between star, shine, and clay, my one hand holding tight my other hand. Won't you come celebrate with me that every day something has tried to kill me and has failed? Those were my marching orders from Lucille Clifton. And that day I started back writing poetry. I was writing when I was in middle school, but forgot about the love of my life, which was writing. And so I transitioned from counselor to poet. Now this is my 27th year, going on my 27th year as a poet. I want you to think, teachers and administrators and poetry lovers, we are indeed in terrific times, but there's also beauty. So before I read my next two poems by other poets, I wanted to give you a little check-in list. And number one, I'm going to ask you to be mindful to take care of yourself in these times, in all times, but especially in these times. Teachers, I would really encourage you to locate yourself on your introversion, extroversion scale. And many people get introversion, extroversion confused for shy and not shy. That is not what they mean. Introversion means that you get your source of inspiration and you restore by going inward. Extroverted means you get replenished and refuel by being around people. And many of us are, we have a percentage. My percentage is 70-30, 70 extroverted, 30 introverted. So I do need that time to come back and replenish. So I'm asking you for self-care to go ahead and write down your percentage. What are you on your introversion scale? Because when you know that, especially when in the classroom, you know that what you need and how you need to support yourself, you also know that for your students. Number two, as a poet, I'm going to ask you to listen to your heart. And it wasn't 28 years ago, I wasn't used to listening to my heart. I was used to listening to everybody's expectation of me. Wife, mother, daughter, niece, I was that counselor for everyone else until I started listening to myself. And I forget who said it, but they said the longest journey you will ever take is the 11 inches between your head and your heart. So during this keynote, I want you to listen with your heart, and please remember to make changes when prompted by your inner call or your higher power, whichever suits you. I have transitioned many times in my life, and unfortunately, I think I'm so stubborn, it's all through illness because I'm that stubborn. I'm trying to segue gently. So I want to share two poems by other poets before I get into my own work. One, when I was listening to The Language of Life, was Lucille Clifton. The second poet that I was introduced was Coleman Barks. Write his name down. He translates Rumi, a 13th century mystic poet. And this is one of the poems he recited. And it's just really short. And it said, the title is, "Let the beauty we love be what we do." Today, like every other day, we wake up empty and frightened. Don't open the door to the study and begin reading. Take down a musical instrument. Let the beauty we love be what we do. There are 100 ways to kneel and kiss the ground. And I love Rumi, even though he's 13th century, he feels like he's so present for today. And my next poem is a poem by Mary Oliver. We just lost her. She was a wonderful nature poet. And this is also Teacher Appreciation Week. So I wanted to read this poem, all of you who teach in formal and informal settings. It's called Wild Geese. Some of you probably already heard it, but it's one of these mantra poems that I come back to you. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscape, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, The wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. I love that poem. I hope you do too. And I tell you, I love being here virtually, but I missed the call and response. I definitely was raised with call and response. So hopefully we'll be able to do a little talk back. I'm going to read a poem that tells you a little bit about me. I'm an autobiographical poet. I write about my life story and my life experiences. And I want to start off with a poem from my newest book, What My Hands Say, and it's called Story. And when you're getting a degree, sometimes people tell you things that are not useful. And one of the things that was not useful when I was getting my MFA, I had someone tell me, don't write about family because it's not sophisticated. I beg to differ. I write a lot about family. And when my grandmother passed, I was getting my MFA. And this is the poem that I wrote after she died. It's a short one. And then also to those naysayers. Stories. Some hate the stories I tell. Say, don't go back, as if my mouth is connected to their hearts. My head bowed, eyes intent on the stitch, not busy with blame. I work the pieces. Render the trade I learned at my mama and my grandmama's hands. We call it making something out of nothing. These stories are useful things. Stitches I follow, they guide me clear and help me stand. It took me about 10 years to get my chops as a poet, and the chops and the craft became stronger once I realized that I needed to write about place. I needed to write about my family and the South Carolina landscape. I'm also a military kid, so I didn't always feel like I belonged, but there was a thread here in South Carolina. And the first poem that really I felt is a signature poem, and it's about my mother. I woke up because, and I don't know if you all know Jonathan Green. He's a visual artist in South Carolina. He's an international poet, artist. So please look up his work. He had asked me to write a poem for one of his calendars, and I could not write this poem for the life of me. And then after I failed, I had gone to sleep, and the next day woke up in tears. And this poem that I'm going to read to you is about my mother. And I'm going to share it. It's a signature poem. It's an older poem. And it wasn't until I looked to her, I realized that I needed to navigate who I was through the lens of the people who made me up. Now, I'm going to read the poem, and you can see on there's the cover of the book, if you can see it. It's Backbone. It's me and my mother back in 1960 something. And when I got ready to write this poem and this book, I told my mom I wanted to use that photo. I said, but I think the photo is off-centered or something's wrong with the photo. And because behind us is our house. And I said, Mom, it's crooked. And my mother looked down at me and looked up. She looked down and then looked up again. And she looked down at the picture, looked up again and said, girl, ain't nothing wrong with that picture. Our house was leaning. I had grew up in abject poverty and had not a clue because of the woman who made me. This poem is called Mama's Magic. My mama is magic. Always was, always will be. There is one phrase that constantly bubbled from the lips of her 5 children. My mama can do it. We thought my mama knew everything. Believed she did as if she were born full blown from the Encyclopedia Britannica. I could tell you stories how she transformed a rundown paint-peeled shack into a home. How she heated us with tin tub baths from a kettle on the stove, poured it over in there like an elixir. My mama is protection like those quilts her mama used to make. She tucked us in with cut out history all around us, and we found we could walk anywhere in this world and not feel alone. My mama never whispered the shame of poverty in our ears. She taught us to dance to our own shadows, pay no attention to those grand parties on the other side of the track. Make your own music, she'd say, as she walked and cleaned the shadows of that place. Pay no attention to those grand parties on the other side of the track. You'll get there, her broom seemed to say with every wisp. We were my mama's favorite recipe. She whipped us up with her big brown hands and a big brown bowl supported by her big brown arms. We were homemade children, stitched together with homemade love. We didn't get everything we wanted, but we lacked for nothing. We looked at the stars in my mama's eyes and they told us we owned the world. We walked like kings and queens, even on midnight trips to the outhouse. We were under her spell. My mama didn't study at no Harvard or Yale, but the things she knew, you couldn't learn in no book, like how to make your life sing like sweet potato pie sweetness out of open window, how to make anybody feel at home, how with just the right moment, be silent and with those eyes say, everything's gonna be all right, child. Everything's gonna be all right. How she tended to our sickness, how she raised our spirits, how she kept flowers living on our dilapidated porch in the midst of family chaos. My mama raised children like it was her business in life. Put us on her hip and kept on moving, keeping that house pine sol clean. Yeah, my mama's magic. Always was, always will be. Her magic, how to stay steady and sure in this fast-paced world. Now when people see me with my head held high and my back erect and look at me with the, who does she think she is? I keep on walking with assurance inside. I'm Black Magic, and I'm Jeanette Redmond's child. So that is the tribute to my mother, and also the moment that I realized that I had moved to being a writer, writing about plays. With that said, I want to wish all the mothers and those of you who are in mothering roles, happy Mother's Day upcoming this Sunday. Now I want to introduce you all to a South Carolina son. His name is Peg Leg Bates. His name is Clayton Bates. And we have slides to show you. I want to show you a picture of him and then also a video. And so if we can cue the picture. So yes, that's him. And then there's also a children's book, Knocking on Wood. So that is available. And so before we show the video, I just want to say a little bit about Peg Leg Bates. He's from my hometown, my father's hometown. And during Jim Crow era, he was 12 and he had two choices, either work in the field or the factory. He chose the factory. Hard work, field is harder. And on the third day, his mom allowed him to go and work in the factory. On his third day working in the factory, he got his pants leg caught in the cotton gin. During that time, it was hard to find anyone to operate on Black folks, but they found a country doctor who did the surgery on his mama's kitchen table. But I want you to see him before I do the poem through this short video.
Don't look at me in sympathy. I'm glad that I'm this way. For I feel good and I'm knocking on wood as long as I can stay. I mix light fantastics up with hot gymnastics. I'm Peg Leg Bates, the one-leg dancing man.
Isn't that phenomenal? This is the poem that I wrote in honor of him. Some people got 2 good feet and still don't know what to do. My smoothness makes the argument for just 1. My other leg be long gone, sacrificed to the cotton gin god. They pinned my mango mess down to the kitchen table, made me suffer more under the hand of an unsterilized knife with only a cotton bit to bear the pain. I got up, spit out that terrible taste of Jim Crow and pity, spun my mama's guilt and worry into a dance that twists past the neighbor's prayers, gossip and stares of, how he gonna make do on just 1 leg? I strap on my dreams with tucks, tails, and flair. I turn can't into can without losing time, not even in my mind. This fountain in sun done good. I knock beats on wood. I'm a worldwide showstopper, all right. I shout rings around all those other 2-footers. I'm the master of my own fate. And when the world cut me at the thigh, I don't shuffle off in misery. I get up on my 1 good leg and fly. The beauty about Pegleg Bates was that he was a teaching artist as well. I didn't know until after I wrote the poem that he taught my mother and my father at Fountain and Color High School in 1957. So there's so many full circles to writing about place. And I want you to think about place also in practice and with your students. What about the area where they come from? Not just physical geography, but also emotional geography. It's really important to mine your surroundings and where you come from, because I think it gives you your voice. And you know, I always said I would never come back to South Carolina, but what do they say? Never say never. And when my mother got sick, I came home to take care of her. And this is when I started hearing all of these other stories about South Carolina and things and ideas and threads and people in history that I needed to write about that were being missed in the textbook. So the next person I want to introduce you to is David Drake. Please write his name down, David Drake. He was an enslaved potter poet. Now, what's odd about that? Not a potter, because many enslaved people had several crafts that, if they're a craftsperson, that they had to, he was a bricklayer and a potter. But the poet part is unusual. And we don't know how he learned to read or write. We just know that his master owned a printing press. And we surmise that David Drake began writing because he was cleaning the printing press. And he has pots, and he did not write on paper, he wrote on the lip of his pots in couplets. His most famous couplet that I love, and I live in South Carolina, there are 13 of his pots in our museum, but they're all over the country. But the quote that's on his pot that I love the most goes like this: I wonder where is all my relations, friendship to all and every nation. This is a powerful man. I'll read a poem, and it's called Praise Day, that I wrote for him. Enslaved potter poet, Edgefield, South Carolina. First time I see a jar rise up, I be midwife into life. Understood how these pots and I be kin, dismissed to what's underfoot. I learned to turn and turn people the world with pots. I pour my need into the need until 40,000 around me crowd, but everything I love, I lose. So I want what I mold to hold. Even my empty pots be full. One say, I wonder where is all my relations, friendship to all in every nation. There are lanterns in my words. Every story got another story. Some call me Dave the slave. If that's all they got, I say leader rhymes to me. When people look at me, a slave be the first excuse they use not to see me. I say praise me. It won't fall on deaf ears. I catch praise like most people catch naps. I'm a 6-foot vessel of anything but ordinary. A one of a kind with the Carolina shine. I step out of the rows of cotton to master the potter's wheel. I take the wind out of can. With my mark, I makes a mark. I sign my name Dave. I don't write slave. See if my pots and I spin history. See if we hold, hold, hold. And I want to share another sentiment from Dave. I have 26 poems about David Drake that is getting ready to be turned into looks like a coffee table book with Jonathan Green. And Jonathan Green, if you can see the painting behind me, that's a print of his work. Had done all of these paintings of Dave in the 90s. There are no photographs of Dave, so we have to rely on paintings and the works of artists. And this is what I've been doing poetically, is to try to lift him up. And so my work will be included with Jonathan Green and Dr. Gabrielle Foreman and Dr. Lena Overby. We've been working on this work for 7 years. So here's another poem that I wrote for Dave, and it's called I Master. Who drives the whip? Be at the helm. Work harder, boy, don't nobody have to tell me. Back into this clay, I shoulder the grind. See my pots and you'll know I's joke, not by lash, but by every chamber of my heart. What my mouth don't say, my hands do. My pots be what most people ain't. Whole. Head down, eyes lifted higher than the one trying his best to beat me down. Into each mound, I pulls a body into being. With these hands, a fire burns that can't be put out. Sometimes I get puffed up, wild turkey-like. I do my best to smooth my feathers down, bend myself around prayer. But here I stand, closest to the Lord, my one true master. He turns the world, I spin the wheel as I breathe life into these lumps. I too, from mud, make miracles. I'm really interested in connecting with work that I would have wanted to get when I was growing up and when I was in school. I'm writing a series of poems about the three Harriets, and I know everybody knows Harriet Tubman, right? But there's also Harriet E. Wilson, who was the first Black novelist, and Harriet Jacobs, who was she was enslaved and hid in her attic for 7 years. I'm going to share, before I get out of place and move into a little bit of instruction with you all, I want to share a poem that I wrote about Harriet Tubman. I've been writing about her for about 2 years, and yes, I do love the movie. There's some Hollywood aspects to it, but it's just brilliant, and as she was. And this is the poem that I wrote for her, and it's in Harriet's voice. It's called Every One of My Names. Every one of my names I earned, except the first, Araminta Ross, given to me at birth. Didn't take too much to it. Sounds like a flower standing in the field. Araminta, Araminta got God's covering. I keep the prayer and music from it. For short, they call me Minty. I like how that sing, it's got more of my sting. I stood up to the master, no matter who was wrong, but he head-butted me into dreams and visions. I took Tubman from my man. My husband left me because I wouldn't stay put. He wanted me rooted to his need and a cabin. He asked me in my heart with that. Lord knows I loved him. No, I loved him too. He loved me too, but I was meant for more. I belonged to the many. They calls me Harriet. I took Harriet from my mama. Her love circled around me like my wrap around my head, like my shawl hugs my shoulder. They calls me brave because I wrap my long arms around my peoples. This is how I stand, rooted and ready for battle. This is how I love, fitted for fight. My face is not fixed on pleasing. What good is a smile in war? Call me conductor too, cause I head this foot train with hounds at my bloody feet. I runs, and I still runs. And I told Frederick Douglass once, I ain't never lost a passenger. I know which way is north with my ear to God's mouth. General, they call me too, cause I'm at the head where no woman's supposed to be. But I outsmart every slaver's hunt. Fear for what? I break chains, but they minds be next. If they even thinking about turning back, I point pistol to head and say, a dead Negro tells no tale. This is the way my spirit rise up. It be both a curse and a blessing. This fire burns, it's never snuffed out. They call me Moses, 'cause my people must go free. They whisper spy too when they speak of me, 'cause I got my hands in so many plots. They give me names, so many names, most of them vanished. But by God's grace, I go with these able hands to answer every call, all woman. So I am going to start to close because I want to definitely have time for Q&A, but I want you to write down a line of affirmation for yourself, and starting with I am, and it is the beginning of a praise poem. And one of the, and I'm going to give you an example, and then I'm going to read a praise poem, and then I'm going to also read a self-portrait poem. But this I am line, you need to honor yourself. It is a affirmation to self, and use as much imagery that you would like. I'm going to give you just one example. This is a timestamp for now because of what I've been going through. And so here's my line of affirmation, because we need to pour goodness into us. So my line is, I am a bald head, bold woman, flaring red, the color of my grandmother's canna lilies, and announcing my last name. You always know when I enter the room. So as I read these next couple of poems, I want you to go ahead and write your line down, and then you can enter your line in the chat. Please enter it in the chat. So
I have enabled the chat for everyone.
thank you. So my praise poem, and when you write a praise poem, you're honoring yourself, your lineage, and comparing yourself in nature. So I wanted to read a student's praise poem. He's in the fourth grade. He's probably in middle school now. His name is Logan. And I met him when I was teaching in Michigan. So listen to a fourth grader's praise poem. I am strong like a mockingbird singing my sweet songs, big like a player that blocks off the other team and kicking in the goal. My height is 4'9", but my family is the highest in the sky. My ancestors come from a place where Big Ben calls the first hour of every day, the place across the vast ocean where the Beatles were made, where the dreidel spins round and round, and when the bagpipes play loud and louder. This is where the four-leaf clovers come in big green lines. This is me, inside and out. Isn't that lovely? A fourth grader wrote that. That is amazing. So I'll share my praise poem. Praise poems are not to be just confused for metaphor and simile exercises, because you are summoning your lineage and you're telling the story of your lineage. My praise poem, this is an older one, but I love it. It's called New Wings. I am a daughter of the dust, a true sister of the yam. I come from a long line of serious brown women that don't take no mess or apologize for living. I am birthed from the morning earth, deep, rich, and free. Gail, my middle name, describes how I move in this world, sometimes gracefully, other times stormy. Glenis, Welsh, her valley, I have dwelt there far too long. I am 5'3" of cosmic blackness. Call me a nappy bat, a mosquito, call me anything black that has wings and flies. So there will be some handouts to help you with the praise poems in the classroom that will be forwarded to you. And I'm going to move on to the other poem form that I'm really excited about, and there'll be a handout for it too. And I'll start to wrap it up now. I'm going to do 2 poems. They're self-portrait poems. And so I'm going to end on the second self-portrait poem, okay? And have your questions ready. So this is another time stamp of what I'm going through. Self-portrait, 53 days after the stem cell transplant. Facing death, I know now that there is more to life than what we all can see. In the ethers, I hold onto these invisible threads of hope and courage and faith. With multiple myeloma, I have lost more than my 20-year-old locks that hung down my back. I've lost my hand and my heart, my poetic outreach for 27 years, taking poetry to students across the country, across the world. I lost the music in my smooth stroll. I have not danced for 10 months. I have lost the breath, the capacity of my lungs, punished by pneumonia twice. I've lost my hair. My bald head gets looks, outright stares. People cannot hide their questions or hide their horror scrawled on their faces. My self-portrait is a Frida Kahlo-esque painting. My illness turns me inside out, paints both seen and unseen. I am surreal. I am lesions on skull and clavicle and femur. I am cracked bone and marrow siphon. I am weekly blood draws. I have to hold my own hand to save my own life. 2.5 million stems needed. I summoned 12.5 million, a record. Don't believe them when they say this procedure won't hurt. I am high-dose chemotherapy, but if cancer could not kill me, I'll heal. The shadows on my face are maps of where I've walked, landings without light. 53 days later, now 99. I am lighter. I am a shapeshifter on this path I did not choose. Yet between the veil, I morph into this dreamlike mist. I feel like both angel and ancestor already. Time is surreal. I am glad to escape death this go round, but I saw the Grim Reaper twice, his scythe ready to level me. I duck and dodge, and I summon strength as a Wakanda warrior, a Maasai woman, a Southern sage. I meet the looks I get with a direct gaze. Stare, translated. If cancer couldn't kill me, you sure can. I have come through this cancer's fire, finished in the kiln at the highest heat, a hard-won beauty lit from within. And so I would like to do the second self-portrait. It's called Bard in the Making, and it really talks about my philosophy as a teaching artist and a little bit of an origin story, how I came. And if you don't know Jackie Early, please look up her work, and you'll see an essay by me. It's called 1,968 Winters. There is also, there's a reference list that will be sent to you if you want to see other places where I've been published at. Please find me on glenisredmond.com. You can sign up for my newsletter or follow me on Instagram at Glenis Making Poetry, Reign, R-E-I-G-N. It's been a pleasure to talk to you all, and I can't wait to hear your questions or read your questions. This one's called Self-Portrait Bard in the Making. When I was in the 5th grade, I was the biggest tomboy, always in t-shirt and jeans and baseball cap turned sideways, complete with ashy elbows and skin knees and a mouth full of pink bubble gum. I made popping and blowing bubbles into an art form. I was the princess of the playground. I ruled at prison ball, handball, tetherball. I could pummel, I could smash, I could catch, and boy, could I throw. I was the fastest sprinter in school. I could stop on a dime and give you 9 cents change. In other words, I worried my mother. She wanted me in matching outfits, legs crossed and voice ladylike quiet, but I was ollie ollie oxen free loud. Later that year, I heard my first poem at a Black History program. Yolanda Walker recited Jackie Early's poem, 1,968 Winters. Her voice, a red rubber ball, she threw over the heads of all the other kids to me, sitting on the last row, sitting crisscross applesauce. The words hit with a thud in the center of my chest. It grew, it grew, it is still growing. I now take poetry in my own hands, throw it to others, making a team of poets across the world. Thank you all for listening. I want to open the floor up for questions or comments.
Thank you so much, Glenis. That was so beautiful, so inspiring. Oh, we are so fortunate to have you today. So fortunate.
Thank you.
Jason, are you ready with some questions for Glenis?
I am, and I just wanted to say, echoing Vicky, thank you so much. I needed that desperately. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right at the beginning, Kimberly Irvine put in a note, and it's more of just a comment she wanted to make of saying, I just have to thank Glenis for the poetry brainstorming box from last time. My student won a national essay contest with his poem, and he and I were sent to Washington, D.C. as winners.
Wow.
Poetry brainstorming box was the key to his poem. Beautiful, easy, powerful strategy. Thank you so much.
Thank you for reading that. And if people want that workshop, I have it electronically. So if I can shoot it to you all and you can get the packet out to them, because the brainstorming, I took that from Barbara S. Benson, teaching artist who's no longer with us. And and she gave me permission to use it. And I've been using that practice for about 25 years. So if anybody wants that, it is really powerful. And people ask me, how do you get exemplary work from the students? It's because of that brainstorm box. Thank you.
Terrific, thanks. Rosanna Benally-Sag said, thank you, Glenis, for explaining introversion and extroversion from the perspective you discussed. I love it. I totally agree with Rosanna, thanks. You were mentioning that you weren't hearing the feedback, but people were writing it in. Chandra Benita wrote, yes, with many exclamation points.
So yeah, what you're telling me, I have some honorary South Carolinians with the call and response, you know.
Yeah. Harry Carlson put in a question, and it is, how do you balance the need to share personal experiences to make art meaningful and feeling overexposed and open to criticism?
Well, I always take my cue from my heart. I try not to exploit myself. So that's the difference. When I'm working through something, I want to work through it and it becomes art. It is not therapy. It can be therapeutic, but it's not therapy. And so I know I have boundaries. I don't tell all. I tell what I feel is necessary and what I feel will have a universal thread.
That's awesome. Thank you. Grace Watley. Hi, Glenis. Can you talk a little bit about how local and/or historic dialects influences your poetry and shape your voice?
Thank you, Grace. As you could hear the dialect, especially when I'm speaking in Dave, and I speak in a lot of what I call colloquialisms. It is grounded. I'm grounded by the work of my people, the ancestors that came before me, and I face this daunting challenge of a lot of our history was not recorded. So I tend to go back to my grandmother and my grandfather and try to listen to their ears, even though they're not with me, listen with the ear, listen with their, to them, and bring what is authentic to the page, because those stories are important and they are missing. And so there are 5 of us in my family. I'm the only one born in South Carolina. My brother before me was born in Evreux, France. I was miffed. South Carolina, really? And then it took me a while to understand that I'm born in South Carolina for a reason. And I want to tell this weighted, fragile, beautiful history.
Yeah. Another person, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I adore you. I loved listening to your reading of Wild Geese, my favorite poem. It was magical to see your words with your light. Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate
Here
it.
is a question from Sandra Wilson. At this point in your life, with your talent and your experiences, do you still have to work at your poetry? heavily revise.
Yes. Yes. Revision never ends. Matter of fact, even when it's in a book, I can look at it and go, oh, that needs to change, you know. But I have to be careful because I don't want to edit the soul out of my work. And then when I'm working with students, usually we're asking for maybe 3 drafts. I mean, because that's usually all, you know, we have time for. But I do draft my work over 100 times. And it's drafted even before it gets to the page because I've lived with it here and here. And it's being written, but you know, I never will lose the need to revise. And I also have wonderful editors in my life as well that help me look at it, you know, because sometimes you can't see the forest for the trees. But yeah, craft is part of the crafting, and revising is part of the work.
Terrific. Dee Dee Darby Duffin says, Glenis, thank you. Have been stuck with what to call myself, but teaching artists encompasses all the things that I do as an artist. And I'm going to borrow that if you don't mind.
Yes.
As singer, actress, and now playwright, how amazing it is to see and hear from someone who looks like me and sounds like me. I am in love with you, your voice, your presence. The red ball has been caught and will be thrown for others to catch.
You guys are trying to make me cry.
I'm going to cry.
Dee Dee, go on with your bad self, girl. Do your thing. Yes, you are a teaching artist. I was practicing for 10 years and did not know there was a name. And people don't understand it's a hybrid name, teaching artist. And then when they was like, do you teach or are you an artist? I do both. I'm a teaching artist. So yes, embrace that hybrid and go continue your path and create the magic that only the arts, I believe, can give.
Such a great answer. Thank you. I don't have any other questions in here.
Okay.
Actually, literally saying that and one pops in. From Kirsten Darrington, just wanted to say thank you for your poems and this wonderful change of pace compared to what my recent days have felt like. This was the deep breath I needed today. Also, my goal in life is to be a magic mama for my kids. Thank you for that poem.
Oh, I want to be a magic mama for my kids too. I don't know if I am. I have twin daughters who are 30, but I do my best, but I try to study. But thank you for those beautiful words. And Jason, is it okay if I close with the poem?
Oh, absolutely.
I want to close, and I know we're going to take a break after this, but this is a poem that I wrote the first time I started going into the prisons. And it's called Poetry Lesson 101. They have crawled on their bellies through steel bars and beneath iron walls. Last stop before drop off where no one cares. What's pathetic? Many have whispered in my ear, this place is safer than home. The little girl in me understands, shaving a dresser twice by 9-year-old way to guard the bedroom door to keep the devil out, but not safe from the demons within. Push, breathe, petition to monsters, pray to Jesus, release me from this grip and I'll get religion. Lay down, breathe, my fear not released to the break of day. Another book has walked me through the grips of the night. Judy Blume and Beverly Cleary and Maya Angelou freed me with their words and baptized me with their fire and healed me with the strength to go on, cradled me like mothers to help me live again. Together we crawl through steel bars and beneath iron walls to see another world in which to live. Poetry. Now my Black face is spied in artist directories. They think I can teach these boy, men, girl, women, crusted children. Is the look in my eye revealed through the photo? Can they see the toughness of my belly? How I've crawled and scraped from one prison to the next, on to the next. They spit words like rotten teeth out of their mouth. These kids are bad seeds. Forewarned and forearmed, I enter into the gates with gangster lyrics and raps in tow and words to fire to meet the gaze of these demons, these bad boys, these rotten seeds. Eye to eye, I meet no resistance. They peel back their blue-black shells and let me in, and together we crawl through steel bars and beneath iron walls. They do not write rage. They do not spit fire, show fangs, drip venom. They write love poems. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. Glenis, thank you for inspiring us, for healing us, for visiting with us today. It's been such a beautiful afternoon, and I can't thank you enough. And I just want to mention, in 15 minutes, we will come back. If you're interested, Alyssa will put the link in the chat one more time. You need to register, but we're going to take a little break, and we're going to let Glenis's words seep into us and see what comes out.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you. Bye
Thank you
now.
all. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you for your participation and your writing. We really appreciate everyone that